Episode 3 of Get Back, Peter Jackson's new documentary, where he took footage that was originally shot for the project that became Let It Be, and I guess he restored it tremendously, made it look like it was shot yesterday, and used more of it to give a fuller story, a fuller scope of the Beatles as they recorded what became Let It Be. Now, at this point, the Beatles have 3 days to prepare for the rooftop concert, which I guess had been decided.
Yeah, I guess the end of part two, they actually hadn't unveiled that yet, but you see them explaining the idea to Paul off mic, and Paul being excited about it. And then at the beginning, they say, yeah, that's what we're doing, rooftop concert.
Yeah, so that's what they're going to do. They're going to go up on the roof because it has better acoustics than their studio. And they're going to do a live performance, a free concert for the folks of that neighborhood, yeah?
I don't think better acoustics was the reasoning behind this.
That wasn't the reasoning, but
Right.
it's definitely a fact.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Because like half the songs on that album, I did not know this, but apparently were recorded on the roof. I always just assumed that those were studio tracks, and what we saw on the rooftop footage was something else that had been dubbed with the studio.
I made the opposite mistake. I assumed all the songs were recorded on the roof.
Well, they may have been, but as we'll talk about, I think that was their intention, though, was to record that whole album that afternoon on the roof. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
You want to just run through it, day one?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Ringo comes in.
You have a whole table full of notes.
Oh, well,
and I'm sitting here with a beer.
These are for.
I mean, you go. You take the lead on this.
None of this has anything to do with the Beatles.
Oh.
The Beatles is right here. So Ringo comes in on day one, and he plays Octopus's Garden.
Yeah. And only George is there at the time. George immediately leans right into it, like picks up his guitar, like, "Yeah, man, let's do it."
Starts working on a chord progression.
Yeah.
That becomes the song.
Yeah.
So I had no idea that George was so hands-on with turning that into a song, apart from the kind of goofy rubbish that Ringo was banging out.
Yeah, Ringo really had the bare bones of a song
Right.
when he came in. Yeah.
Right. So then John comes in and says, "Oh, what am I playing, Richie?" And Richie says, "Get on the drums or something." And John sits behind the kit and starts banging out a drum part for Octopus's Garden. Then Paul and Linda arrive, but they're not alone.
Yes. They had Linda's daughter. I guess she was divorced before she met Paul.
I guess. Yeah, probably.
And the daughter's like 5 or 6, something like that.
Her name is Heather. She really announces herself, does she not?
Yeah.
How would you describe her behavior?
I don't know. I don't know where you're going with this.
Not at all intrusive? Liberty taking?
No.
Really?
Well, you've never had a daughter of that age. I have. Like, it's pretty standard. Pretty standard behavior for a daughter of that age.
In a professional situation, to not know that she should probably stay out of everybody's way.
Professional situation, dude. Yoko's sitting over in the corner going, "Ah!" How is that a professional? And meanwhile, Heather, the little girl, is looking at Yoko going, "This is fucking nuts." And starts doing it and looking at everyone like, right? Like, who would act like this in a studio? No, Yoko was clearly the least professional person in this whole.
No, see, I disagree. I think she was emulating Yoko because she thought, well, that's what girls do here.
No, she's looking around, like with her eyes going like this, like, this is really bad, right? Like, I thought she was making fun of Yoko, and like she was in on the joke as a 6-year-old when Yoko wasn't. But
well, I feel like she out-Yoko'd Yoko. As far as being a studio, just kind of a negative presence.
I had the complete opposite interpretation of it. I loved, because I'd said last week that I thought part 2 was kind of a dip. Like, the part 1 of this was so great. Part 2 was kind of like, a little less interesting. This is the very beginning of part 3, and I thought she just livened everything up. I loved seeing her. I loved seeing Paul, who, this isn't his daughter.
Right.
But he seems like a natural father with her, and it was just, like, it seemed to liven everything up, and maybe that's what they needed at that point.
Yeah, he seemed to enjoy being a potential step-parent.
Yeah.
I will say this for Heather. She gets behind the barrier with Ringo, who's playing drums on a Paul track, and she's banging on the hi-hat and keeping perfect rhythm.
I did notice that.
That was stunning.
Yeah.
But then after the take, Paul says to Ringo, because he doesn't see that Heather's behind there, do it lighter. Paul can't see that it's not Ringo making that mistake, and Ringo doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
But it is very funny that not only was she banging the shit out of that hi-hat, but she was spot on as far as rhythm.
She was.
Yeah. So they record the Dig It that made the album. They recorded the Long and Winding Road version that made the album. And when that's over, they're convening in the control room, and George says something about Paul potentially putting strings on the Long and Winding Road.
Oh, I missed this. That's funny, man.
Because apparently Paul had mentioned that. And so George brings it up, and he says, yeah, I might do that. A bit of brass and a bit of strings. Now, here's something else that changes history in my mind, because of something the Beatles themselves did many years later.
Right.
All the brass and all the strings that you hear on that album were put in later on by Phil Spector.
Against Paul's wishes.
But this is something that Paul was clearly discussing.
Well, I mean, the Beatles had always utilized George Martin's strings and brass and stuff inserted into songs. Paul just really had an issue with Phil Spector's wall of sound. It's so much more heavy-handed than what George Martin had done in the past. And that was really the issue he had with it. But yeah, it is funny to hear him be like, yeah, maybe we'll put something in there a little bit later, and then have it become what it became, which was, I mean, ever since that, for 50 years now, Paul's been complaining about, oddly enough, not the fact that Phil Spector was a murderer, but that he murdered his album.
I guess about 20 years ago, the Beatles released a version of Let It Be that completely deleted all of Phil's contributions to it.
Yeah, it's called Let It Be Naked. That's actually the version that I own. It's how I know the album, actually. I'm really not that familiar with the Phil Spector. Like you hear, I guess that's what you hear on the radio, but I'm more familiar with the version that you mentioned.
And it's also odd that Phil Spector on the back of the album is credited as a producer when we see Glyn Johns doing so much in that role.
Yeah.
And when you look at Glyn Johns...
Also, George Martin is there the whole time.
George Martin is there.
Yeah.
Did Glyn get the job because he dressed like Phil Spector? Or did he think that in order to be a producer, you had to dress like Phil Spector?
I think it's
he had the haircut. He had the glasses. Did they confuse him for Phil Spector? That was an odd thing.
By the way, do you notice how, like, I think you see it more in part one, but there's a couple guys hanging around the studio who still have the mop top haircuts. And you're like, oh, man, like, you're lame. Like, you're 5 years behind, dude.
Right? You have to grow with the music.
Yeah.
Literally. So the next day, George comes in. He's written a new song. He's very excited. And he says, happy and a rocker, referring to the previous episode where, or perhaps part one, where John said, do you not know we're a rock and roll band?
Yeah.
Something to that effect.
Yeah. That was when he introduced I Me Mine.
Yeah. No. Old Brown Shoe.
No, it was I Me Mine.
The original comment was I Me Mine.
Right.
This was in reference to...
Now you're talking about Old Brown Shoe.
Old Brown Shoe, yeah. So there's I guess something's bleeding in. The mics are bleeding into each other and causing a cacophony in the control room. And John says, I guess George Martin comes out and says something about the drums being on the PA.
Yeah. Which I don't even know what that means. Does that mean the public address system? So it's going through the whole studio?
Yeah.
That seems like, I don't know. Never mind.
Amateur?
Yeah. I was going to use another term, but it might offend someone to our right. So never mind.
You were going to use an address?
All right. Settle that. He's not even listening.
So then John says the drums are on PA. Not my idea of a personal assistant. Okay. So then they do...
Man, we're taking shots at everyone tonight.
That wasn't a shot. It's a reference.
Oh, that was a shot.
Love. Oh, come on. So then they do Oh, Darling.
Okay.
Which isn't released until Abbey Road. But Yoko receives the news that her divorce has come through.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone's very excited. They recorded the version of Get Back that makes the LP, but now bad weather, projected bad weather, delays the rooftop concert. So there are a couple more days thrown in here than
I
originally
think it was
expected.
just one day that they moved it. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to mention that they put writing on the screen that tells you this is the version that appears on the LP.
Mhm.
So when you're hearing the actual version that you know from the album, it lets you know in the documentary, which I thought was really cool. Like, I like that they did that.
That is because now I'm able to see those songs. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I always imagined them differently.
right.
I basically imagined the cover of the album, like every song being the cover of the album. But now I can picture them because I've seen them actually record these songs.
Yeah,
And that's something, whoever thought we'd have that ability?
yeah, that's fantastic.
It's stunning. Now, day 3, John says, I'm trying to get us to do one of George's songs.
Now, is this the day before the concert? What's day 3?
I'm not sure. No. This is 2 days before
2
the
days.
concert at this point.
Okay.
So George starts working through Something,
Oh, yeah.
which is one of the greatest songs ever.
Right.
And as Paul will tell you, until the day he died, Frank Sinatra would say, Something is my favorite Lennon and McCartney song.
Yeah. Yeah, what do you think Frank was? Do you think Frank just didn't know? Or was he like, I don't care? It seems more in his personality was just like, no, this is actually, somebody told him, no, this is actually a George Harrison song. He'd be like, I'm not changing what I said.
That's possible. Probably both, yeah. So Paul mentions that he has a meeting. Now, that has never, I didn't pick up on any detail that might have indicated what that meeting was.
They make some jokes that imply it. Maybe he's meeting to have gay sex with another man. But I don't believe that was. I believe they were just joking around.
Yeah, I don't think that was the case.
But they definitely make some jokes to that effect.
Right, well, it's all the same.
Yeah.
John and Yoko have met with Alan Klein,
Yeah.
the prospective new manager of the Beatles.
Wait, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
You're not
Were you-
participating.
were you done talking about something?
And that's all I have is that we heard.
Okay. So I need to point out that the name of this song, when George first plays it, is "Here You Go Now, Mr. Show." That's the name of the song, not something. Mr. Show. His lyrics were abysmal. Like, if he had stuck with that theme, whatever he was going on, it would have been a terrible song. Do you recall that, his original lyrics?
I do
Well,
now,
something-
and I assumed what
Here
he
we
was
go
singing,
now, Mr. Show.
Here we go, you missed the show or something
No,
like that.
it was Mr. Show.
Mr. Show.
At least that's what was subtitled at the bottom.
Okay.
And then he's just struggling through this, and he goes, "I don't know, Paul. What do you think?" And Paul's just like sitting there strumming on a bass, and he goes, "I don't know, something." And that was it. Paul's just I don't know, something, and that stuck in George's head as something. You may have to go back and look at it again if you didn't pick up
I'll
on
have
that. Man.
to.
It's fascinating.
I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was a complete accident. And that the original lyric, he did not have these beautiful love lyric lines that the song became when he initially wrote that.
Well, see, I was always impressed with the demo that's on Anthology 3. And it is pretty fleshed out lyrically.
Yeah, well, it was probably later on then. 'cause
Right,
I'm
right,
telling
right.
you, he did not have that in mind until Paul just threw, I don't know, something, whatever. The song could have been called Whatever if that was what Paul had said.
So, yeah, John and Yoko met with Alan Klein. John was really impressed.
Yeah, surprising, right? Because I always thought that was a big rift. I had always heard that. Oh wait, I'm getting this wrong. John wanted Klein to manage a band, and Paul wanted
His father-in-law.
his father-in-law. Right, I got that backwards. Yeah.
So,
yeah, but you don't see any of the resolution of any of that. in
no,
this.
Alan Klein never appears.
Yeah, they have a still photo of him at one point, but that's it.
I wonder if Paul's meeting was with his father-in-law.
Yeah, it could be. Wait, you think he was taking it in a can from his father-in-law?
Oh, jeez. Come on. So the final version of Don't Let Me Down is laid down at last. They can stop rehearsing that one. And the day ends with the Beatles having their first full meeting with Alan Klein. The whole band has a meeting with him, and he doesn't appear in the film, as we said. Day 4.
Now it's the day before the concert.
Day before the concert, and not much goes on. But John does talk about Alan Klein. He's talking about him to Glenn Johns.
Mm-hmm.
And he calls Alan a con man who's on our side for a change.
Yeah.
Now, Michael Lindsay
and
Hogg.
many people say, like, I mean, in the documentary, they're all like, "Oh, he's a, I guess, kind of a con man genius. Like, he tells you exactly what you want to hear, and if you start fading away, then he'll switch tunes and start telling you something different.
Yeah.
Until you're on his side. So.
Yeah, I think it was Glenn who pointed that out.
But he did manage the Rolling Stones already at this point, right? Like, he wasn't a con man like Magic Alex, who we talked about last episode.
Right. No, he was actually somebody who was able to produce some level of result.
Right.
The Stones did have to sue him in the 70s for unpaid royalties or something like that, and it didn't turn out well. So Michael Lindsay Hogg, the guy who's shooting this footage for his documentary that became Let It Be, he says, a lot of good stuff we shot for the documentary, but there's no story yet. What story do you need?
It's the Beatles making an album.
You've spent a month with the Beatles.
Yeah, that should be the story.
Yes, that's all you need.
And now a host for this evening, the Rolling Stones. Sadly, that only appeared in part 2. I wish John had kept that going through the whole thing because we all enjoyed it so much.
George doesn't want to go on the roof and perform.
Right.
Someone else joins them in studio.
No, don't worry about it, Jim. Sorry.
There's another guest in studio.
Billy Preston? I don't know who's.
Well, no, Billy Preston's in the band at this point.
Yeah, he's there the whole time. Yeah.
Right. No, Mike McCartney.
Paul's brother.
Paul's brother.
Right.
Do you know this about Mike McCartney?
He's Paul's brother? Yes, I did know that.
Not only that, at the time that this is shot, he was the last one in the studio who had the latest UK #1.
Really?
Yes.
I had no idea about any of this.
He was in a comedy/poetry group called The Scaffold.
Oh, God. Comedy/poetry. That sounds terrible.
And they recorded a novelty single in 1968 called Lily the Pink. And it was the Christmas #1 of that year.
You know what? Who's that other guy who did a lot of those? Oh, Dickie Goodman. You know what? Let's talk about Dickie Goodman for a while. No, I'm joking. That was...
See, Chris.
Come on. It's an inside joke. Nobody... See, it would have just been glossed over, except now you're stopping
No,
and doing
because
that.
it would appear as though I was complicit, and now you're attacking people. I was never attacking
I'm
people.
not attacking anyone. It was just
okay.
a freaking joke.
All right.
No one's attacking anyone on that show. Where were we?
Yeah. So George expresses a desire to record a solo album of his own material. And John seems to float the idea of that solo album being a Beatles album, but saying these are all George's songs.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that. Okay. So they could have released solo albums under the Beatles label.
Well, George specifically, because he had so many songs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Or maybe they would have done the Kiss thing years before them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Kiss did that, right? Yeah. Man, I wish they had done that, frankly.
Yeah, it would have been nice if...
It would have been nice for all of us.
They had stayed together. So, it's the big day. The historic day.
Right.
The rooftop concert. They have cameras on the roof where they're going to perform.
They have 10 cameras, 5 on the roof, 4 on the streets to record man on the street type of thing or woman on the street, and 1 in the lobby of the office or the building where they're performing on the roof of.
Now, that one is hidden.
Yes.
Which was a genius move.
Yes.
So they go up there, and Paul stomps 4 times on the rooftop plywood, unaware that he just invented glam rock. This guy's unbelievable. None of these people walking around you see milling about on the streets when the Beatles start to play. You know, the man on the street thing you were referring to?
Right.
None of those people, it's amazing to think of now. But none of those people had ever heard these songs.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No,
So it was completely foreign to them. But most of them knew it was the Beatles and enjoyed the fact that the Beatles were performing for them.
right. Yeah. And I feel like they were trying to, the guys who had the cameras for the Man on the Street interviews were trying to goad the older people into being like, oh, this is rubbish. But meanwhile, most of the older guys are like, I love them. They're great.
Good for them.
Like, do you own any of their albums? No, my kids do, and I like hearing them.
Right.
You know, like it was all like there was like one or two curmudgeons who, meanwhile, they're probably trying to broker like a $2 million pound deal across the street. Like, could you keep it down? I almost closed this deal. Like, no one was really that upset throughout.
What's the figure? What amount is the deal worth?
I said 2 million pounds. I don't know.
I think you said $200 million pound or something.
It's possible. I'm sure Jim will pull it and play it back in post.
All right, so two officers show up in the lobby. And again, there's a hidden camera in the lobby. One of these officers says they've received 30 noise complaints in a matter of minutes, and the performance has to stop.
Did you have that officer's name? Because it was something pretty funny.
They did put it up on the screen, but no, I do not have
was
the
something.
officer's name.
All right.
So I guess they had a receptionist there. Her name was Debbie Wellham,
Right.
an unsung heroine.
Oh, that's you. I was wondering who you were referring to, because last week you said there was an unsung hero. I think you said hero rather than heroine.
Well, I misgendered the.
But watching it, I really wasn't sure, but I was guessing that's who you meant. She does do yeoman's work, in more way than one, but in kind of deflecting the police. Although they did bring down, I believe it was Mal.
Mal Evans comes
The
down.
the Beatles
Road manager.
Road manager, right?
And he also does an excellent job
Yeah.
of delaying the police officer and just stopping them from stopping this amazing event that by almost 98% of the people outside think this is the greatest thing they've ever seen. No one cares.
And it's a very British thing to see how the interaction between Mal and Debbie and the two very young police officers, younger than the Beatles. It's very British how they're all so polite. I mean, it's like, well, at some point, this all needs to stop. And well, yeah, but yeah, it's all very, very given the current climate of police relations in this country, it's very quaint to see how all that goes down.
Now, you did mention Mal Evans turns up, and the officer repeats his complaint. Mal agrees to go up and turn the PA off as the police kindly wait in the lobby. Now, meanwhile, this is all still going on and nothing's being done. The Beatles are playing their little hearts out. So one of the cops says, take us to the roof, please. So as they launch into Don't Let Me Down, thankfully for the last time.
Right, but as we said, I think this is one of the ones where the scroll goes across the screen. This is the version that appeared on the album.
Right.
So, and I think there was 4. Almost every song they played up there is what they used on the album. I guess that was the original intention, was we're going to record the album.
Record the whole album, yeah. So the cops arrive on the roof, and they just stand there at first.
Yeah.
Because I half believe they just wanted to be there.
Yeah, you're seeing a Beatles concert, and like there's 20 people in the audience.
And you have an entree.
Right.
You have a badge that allows you entrance. All you have to do is ask. No one's going to say no.
Right.
But then the sergeant shows up. And he says to Debbie Wellham, do you mind if I go in? And she says, don't go upstairs. It's overweight.
Yeah.
Which is kind of calling him fat. But providing a great excuse that it's a safety concern. There are too many people up there, too much equipment, and you'll cause a bigger problem than these noise concerns you seem to have.
Right.
So they do get back. I think they did that 3 times on the roof.
And she tells him, just go up to the 4th floor. It's like, the level below. He's like, all right. Like, you imagine a police sergeant just being like, yeah, all right, well, we'll see how it goes. Like, there's so little, like, animosity from the police directed. Like, they're just, all right, we gotta respond to a noise complaint. They're really not looking to shut this down, but I guess they feel like they kind of, eventually they kind of have to, or I don't know.
Or at least show that they're doing something.
Yeah.
So Mal, they get back. Mal turns off George's amp. And after a few angry words from George, George just turns it right back on
Yeah.
and continues playing.
Now, do you think George was pissed that of all the amps he could have turned off, why mine?
Sure.
Like, I'm the guy who's, like, I feel like, because that was a theme through this whole thing, is how George, I mean, he quit the band at the end of part 1. So he's clearly feeling like he's being, what's the term? Targeted.
Especially if you're far away from a musical performance, the only things you can hear are the rhythm section.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So to turn off the lead guitar isn't really, who doesn't even play through the whole song.
Yeah.
It's not going to do much. It's just a kind of a show of strength, I guess.
Yeah, but also I would say his was the amp closest to, if you were walking out onto the roof, his was the closest amp.
That'd be the
so
one.
maybe that was the simple explanation, but I don't think George took it that way at all.
So the one cop keeps mentioning,
Like, you wouldn't dare turn off John or Paul's amp. You're turning off mine.
yeah. So
And
that
F you, I'm plugging it right back in.
that tells you something about where I stand.
Yeah.
Or it tells me something about where I stand
Yeah.
in your mind. Absolutely. So they finish Get Back, and despite the threats that were made in the lobby about arresting me, I'm going to have to start arresting people. I don't know why the cops are coming from Liverpool too, but I don't know. I got here early. No one was arrested, of course, apart from Billy Preston, who for some reason did 20 years for this. And that's about where things end.
Yeah.
Now, there was an article when this first debuted, this documentary, I believe in The Independent, and the headline was something to the effect of, "We all owe Yoko an apology."
No, we don't all owe Yoko an apology, because only the people that were complaining about her for the last 50 years owe her an apology. I never had a problem with her, and a lot of people didn't. So,
But she's long been a very detested figure in music history.
well, because people didn't like her music. But there's one thing to not like her music.
No, people blamed her for breaking up the Beatles.
Well, I'm saying that's two different things. Like, I never blamed her, but I also hate her. I mean, I was making fun of it earlier in the show.
Right.
I
Well, it's
despise
barely
her
music. I don't think most people make fun of her music, but that's because they don't like her personally, because they see her as the woman who broke up the Beatles.
No, people
That's
don't-
been the narrative for half a century.
No, her music is terrible, objectively terrible.
I don't think that's what it is, Chris. I don't think that's why people have such hatred toward the woman.
I think you can separate the two and say, whatever. I guess it doesn't really matter. But yeah, it does end abruptly. And they really don't even say that, like, that album. Well, no, they do say. Actually, there's an epilogue to that, Steve, which is that they go in the next day and finish the album. They record all the songs that they could not record. And they were going to record more on the roof. The police shut them down. I don't know if they were going to record all of them. They may not have been ready. But the next day, they finished the album. That album was done the day after that concert. And for some reason, they didn't release it. They came back weeks later, right after Ringo finished his whatever nonsense he was doing.
The Magic Christian, he was making a horrible motion picture. That's why they had such a small time frame to make this album.
Yeah. But as soon as he was done, weeks later, they went and recorded Abbey Road.
I think the reason that came out first is because the documentary Let It Be was delayed.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
It took longer to edit than it took to make Abbey Road.
Yeah, but they don't explain any of that. It's just they show them the next day recording the rest of the songs, and then that's it. And you don't get that part of it. But it was interesting to me that it was only weeks later that they recorded Abbey Road. I mean, but you saw most of the songs from Abbey Road. You saw them being developed in this documentary.
Right. Yeah, a lot of them existed longer than we thought.
Yeah. Well, so is that it, man? We it's been 4 weeks of us talking about the Beatles.
Yeah, is that
it now?
I don't know if that's it, Chris. Anything you'd like to add?
I mean, no, but
Well, I'm always up for talking about the Beatles.
Yeah, we both are. We both love them. But you said when we started this, you'd watched all 3 parts straight through.
Right.
That you were sad when it ended.
Yeah, because we'll never have anything like this again.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sad now that we're done talking about it. I don't have anything else to say.
Well, we can always talk about the Beatles, Chris. I don't know how new and relevant to the changing of history will be.